Why, hello everyone. Good evening. Thank you all, or morning, depending where you're logging in from. Thank you all for joining our third installment of Behind the Walls, Conditions, Neglect, and Human Cost. My name is Mildred Danis-Taylor. And I want to just make note, if you're just entering this webinar, please make sure that you introduce yourself with the chat by typing in your name, your pronoun, and what city you're logging in from. I am your moderator for today.
Bienvenidos, gracias por estar aquí. Por favor, preséntate con tu nombre, tus pronombres y de la ciudad en la que te encuentras. Mi nombre es Mildred, yo voy a ser tu moderadora hoy.
Awesome. And that was Anna. She will be she'll be providing our interpretation for today. Thank you all. Again, this is the third webinar in the series of Making a Detention State, brought to you by the organizations El Refugio, Project South, Baji, and several organizations that you may see here on the screen. We'll be announcing the different organizations' names as we're continuing on through this series. Again, want to thank you all for logging on. So the first webinar was about the deep history of immigration rights. One moment, I'll allow Anna to go ahead and provide a brief interpretation. I believe I was going too fast. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Mildred. Gracias, Mildred. Hola a todos, muy buenas tardes. Yo me llamo Ana y hoy con mi cointérprete Miguel vamos a estar proporcionando interpretación simultánea en inglés y en español. Good evening or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ana, and today with my co-interpreter Miguel, we're going to be providing simultaneous interpretation in English and Spanish. Antes que nada, les damos las gracias a todas las personas que están aquí por su compromiso en la creación de espacios bilingües. First of all, thank you so much to all of our organizers, panelists, and participants for your commitment in creating a bilingual space. Les vamos a pedir de favor que nos ayuden a co-crear este espacio. We're going to ask you to please do your part in helping us co-create this space. Remember to speak loudly, clearly, and most importantly, at a very moderate pace, especially if you're reading something or you're really excited. If you're not bilingual in English and Spanish, you will have to select a language channel to participate. But if you are bilingual in English and Spanish, we encourage you to speak a little bit more in the non-dominant language so that we can really lean into the multilingual skill of this group. If you see one of the interpreters raise their hand, it is just a reminder to speak more slowly. You do not have to apologize. Don't interrupt what you were saying. Just take note, slow down, and keep going. Por favor, acuérdate de hablar fuerte, claro, y sobre todo a un ritmo moderado, especialmente si estás leyendo algo o con mucha pasión, estás hablando con mucha pasión. Por favor, si eres bilingüe, queremos que te animes a hablar un poquito más en el idioma no dominante para verdaderamente acercarnos a la habilidad multilingüe de este grupo. Si no eres bilingüe en español y en inglés, tienes que seleccionar un canal de idiomas. Si ven que uno de nuestros intérpretes alza la mano, es solamente un recordatorio que hay que hablar un poquito más despacio. No tienes que pedir perdón, no tienes que interrumpir lo que estabas diciendo, solo toma nota, habla más lento y sigue adelante. Now, to access the interpretation in English, you're going to select the globe that's in the lower part of your screens with a message about language interpretation. Click on the globe and select the language in which you'd like to participate and listen during the session. There are also instructions in the chat. Please refer to them, as well as some visual instructions on your screen. Para acceder a la interpretación en español, por favor dale clic al globo en la parte inferior de tu pantalla con un mensaje sobre la interpretación de idiomas. Dale clic a ese globito, elige el idioma en el que te gustaría participar y escuchar durante esta sesión. También hay instrucciones en el chat en las que te puedes referir y algunas instrucciones visuales en nuestra pantalla. Si ya estás en el canal de español, mándame un pulgarcito arriba. If you're If you are already in the English channel, please send me a thumbs up. If you are bilingual, send me a heart. Si eres bilingüe, mándame un corazoncito. Cualquier problema o comentario, mándanos un mensaje en el chat. Estamos aquí para ayudarles. If you have any issues or comments, send us a message in the chat. We're here to support you. Let's get started. Vamos a empezar.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. Again, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Mildred Danis-Taylor. I am a co-founder of Community Spark Solutions. I am a director of strategic partnerships and have recently found myself in the advocacy world. This is Making of a Detention State. This is our third webinar in the series of Making of a Detention State, brought to you by the organizations you see on the screen. You got El Refugio, you have Project South, you have, oh, there we go. Wonderful. Appreciate you. Again, this is brought to you by these amazing organizations. The first webinar was about the deep history of immigrations, rights, and organizing in Georgia. The second webinar was about disappearances, how difficult it can be for loved ones and attorneys outside of contact in their loved ones once they get detained by ICE. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my story. My name again is Mildred, used to be Pierre. My husband is currently detained at Stewart Detention Center. He is a disabled Black man. He's been in Stewart Detention for over a year. And I found myself in the space of advocacy because there were limited resources for people of color or Black people specifically, and even more difficult for a Black man with disabilities. And then so I found myself in the space of advocacy because he has been experiencing a wealth of discrimination, of lack of accommodation while at Stewart Detention Center. And he's been in solitary confinement. He has been not provided meals. He was recently finally provided a wheelchair. His prosthetics were not, he was not provided proper medical attention for his prosthetics. As a result, today as we stand, he has a new medical diagnosis that he did not have prior to detention, that he has, we believe, as a result of not having medical attention for his prosthetics, so medical neglect. So here I am today, and I thank everyone for being on the call. All right, let's get into this. So I would like to call on our panelists to introduce themselves. We can go ahead and start with Priyanka.
Hey everyone, my name is Priyanka Bhatt. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior staff attorney with Project Self.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to Uche.
Hi everyone, my name is Uchechukwu Onwa. So for this purpose of this webinar, I'm wearing two hats tonight. So I'm the National Civic Engagement Coordinator for the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, Bhatt, and I'm also the Executive Director and founder of the Black Diaspora Liberty Initiative. Thank you.
And Leanne Sanchez.
Hola a todos, soy Lian Sánchez. Soy. ¿Me escuchan? ¿Aló?
Yes.
Ok. Hola a todos, soy Lian Sánchez, dirijo Community EsTrEl, pronombres ella, y fui una persona impactada, una mujer trans.
Awesome. And then we have Amilcar Valencia.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Amilcar Valencia, and I'm here representing El Refugio.
Awesome. Priyanka, I'd like to ask you, or can you go ahead and talk about the detention landscape in Georgia? What are the different detention centers and who are they owned by?
Yeah, absolutely. Can we pull up the slides?
I'm sorry, before you go into that question, can you go ahead and talk a little bit more about what your organization does as it relates to immigration in Georgia?
Sure, I'm happy to start and I can pass it along to my colleagues. So Project South, we're a social justice organization based in Atlanta, and a lot of the work that we do is to protect and defend the rights of communities of color, including Black, Muslim, Arab, and immigrant communities. And that work, includes dismantling detention pipelines that criminalize our communities to begin with and to work to shut down immigration detention centers. So for the last decade, we've worked with detained immigrants to uplift their concerns and their voices. We've written reports on the human rights abuses happening in immigration detention centers. We've supported organizing efforts. We've done congressional advocacy, local advocacy, and even international advocacy. And we engage in impact litigation to hold private prison companies and ICE accountable for the abuses. So throughout all this work, we've been part of shutdown campaigns that help end the ICE contract at the Atlanta jail and at Irwin County Detention Center. I'm sure everyone has heard, unfortunately, now we're fighting the reopening of Irwin again under this administration. So we're fighting that along with all the other detention centers in Georgia. And I'll just popcorn it to Amilcar.
Thank you, Priyanka. Amilcar Valencia, I'm with El Refugio, as I mentioned before. El Refugio works with people who are impacted by detention in Georgia, specifically for those who are detained at Stu Detention Center. El Refugio started in 2010. We've been doing this work for 15 years, accompanying families, people who are detained. And we have a hospitality house. Families who are visiting their loved ones at the detention center can stay at our house for free on weekends. And we do, of course, other programs in terms of advocating for people who are detained. Similarly, with what Priyanka mentioned about the reports Refugio has, first or secondhand stories of those who are detained at Stewart through visitation, through interviews and the information that we get through the helpline. So we've been able to collect also stories of the neglectful conditions inside of the detention center, and as such, we produce two large reports, one during the pandemic, which I'll speak more about that later on, and another one that speak about the medical neglect and solitary confinement at Stewart, and that report was published in 2024. Our work is it's focused on accompanying people, as I mentioned before, and we're here again to advocate for those who are detained, lifting up the stories, and fighting for their freedom and their dignity.
Thank you, Amilcar. And El Refugio has been amazing for my family. And we are direct, I want to say, recipients of the services they provide. But I would like to turn this to Uche and ask you the same question. What services and how does your organization support immigration communities?
Thank you so much, Mildred, and everyone. So as I shared earlier, I have the privilege of working with both the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, BAJI, and Black Diaspora Liberty Initiative, BDLI, and why the two organizations operate at different scales. They are deeply interconnected in purpose. At BAJI, our work focuses on protecting and empowering Black migrants and African Americans across the country. And that includes here in Georgia. BAJI is a national organization. We organize around policy advocacy, civic engagement, community organizing, and narrative change that ensure that Black migrants are not erased in the broader immigration conversation. In Georgia specifically, that means, we're fighting against detention expansion, advocating for humane policies, and also equipping our communities with tools, know your rights, materials, and tools that would, help them understand their rights and build collective power. Bhatt has created a lot of reports specifically around Black migrant experiences, in detention and also deportation. We also have like a lot of materials, know your right materials, and in different languages that would, allow our communities to understand what their rights are. All of that materials and information are on Bhatt website. And with BDLI, the work is more grassroots and community centered. We focus specifically on Black LGBTQI plus immigrants, providing them with know your right training as well, leadership development training, and cultural programming, and also healing space. In Georgia, for instance, BDLI also is a national organization. We do have membership base in Georgia and in New York State, New York City, and in Georgia, where immigrants face both anti-immigrant legislation and anti-LGBT hostility. The approach for BDLI is very holistic. So we don't just talk about policy, but we also try to address the mental health impact and also belonging for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Uche. And I sat in on one of your presentations last week, and it was heartfelt, and appreciate all the work that you do. With that being said, Leanne, can you please share what you're involved with as far as immigration rights with your organization here in Georgia? You're muted, Leanne.
Hola, ¿me escuchan? Ok. Sí, hola a todos. Pues nosotros nos dedicamos a servir, movilizar, culturalizar y empoderar a pueblos originarios. Y hacemos mucha campaña de prevención, de concientización acerca de violencia de género en, pues, en el sistema, ¿no? En cuanto a todo lo que todo lo que se genera violencia, y parte de eso es la violencia que se vive en las cárceles de pues de inmigración, ¿no? Entonces hablamos desde la violencia familiar hasta la violencia sistemática. Y desde allí, pues, parte de mi historia, que yo fui, pues, impactada, yo fui encarcelada, ¿verdad? Este, pues más de un año, ahí fue donde inició mi activismo. Viví condiciones negligentes médicas. A nosotros como personas latinas, hablantes al español, y hablantes de otras lenguas, se nos dificulta pues el acceso al idioma inglés. Entonces ahí conocí muchas historias, ¿verdad? Son mucha injusticia, ¿no? Sobre todo hacia mi persona, que pues permanecí en segregación disciplinaria, o lo que le llaman el hoyo, por mi identidad, después de quejarme de que de que habían atentado contra mi vida, otros detenidos. Entonces pues me pusieron que yo era lejos de apoyarme, pues me criminalizaron. So, de ahí entonces, cuando salí, pues obviamente de esa cárcel, de ese terrible lugar, ¿verdad? So, me encontré con un grupo de personas que empezamos a organizarnos y y a trabajar por la comunidad. Dentro de ellas, pues en búsqueda de hambre y sed de justicia, nos empezamos a dedicar a hacer las visitas en las cárceles de inmigración. So, nos empezamos a dedicar a hacer cartas en las personas detenidas. Nos empezamos a dedicar a referir a a personas con abogados de inmigración para sus casos, y también nos dedicamos también en hacer campañas de visibilización y de cierres de inmigración, inclusive campañas de liberación, tal como la liberación de la tía Eva, que estuvimos trabajando con el Refugio y otras organizaciones. Estuvimos haciendo también el trabajo de muchas otras personas, como de Joana, como de Maritza, y entre varias personas que estuvimos haciendo esas campañas de liberación de nuestras compañeras trans que estaban detenidas allí. So, y pues sí, lejos de protegernos, pues inmigración con la excusa de protección, pues nos encerraba, ¿verdad? En el hoyo, en las celdas de castigo, donde muchas veces nos escupían o nos aventaban la comida como perros, o nos ponían camisas de fuerzas, ¿verdad? Para renunciar, y usaban todas las estrategias intimidantes hacia nosotros. Entonces, eran condiciones muy crueles, y todo eso lo pasaban nuestras compañeras trans también, nuestras hermanas trans, y nuestros hermanos trans allí, que también estuvo se hizo muy, muy famoso una campaña de un chico trans, de ascendencia asiática, y así, ¿no? Entonces, y es lo que hemos estado haciendo desde también participado a campañas de cierres de inmigración como Stuart, como Foxton, como este, Irwin Coney, que fue un éxito en ese tiempo. También junto con Project South, GLAR y otras organizaciones, también se logró que participamos en la colaboración de cerrar, o de que ACDC terminara el contrato con inmigración durante la administración de la alcaldesa Leticia Lansborough. Entonces, sí hemos estado en comunidad ya más de 12, 13 años, ¿no? Que me he estado involucrada en esto. Entonces, y también, pues, también nos hemos albergado también, o hemos referido a personas que se alberguen en espacios como en el Refugio, que es un lugar, donde muchas de las personas, llegan y trabajan. Me recuerda el caso de Wilhelm también, ¿verdad? Que estuvimos ahí al pendiente, estuvimos ahí, la liberación de este muchacho, entre muchas otras historias. Y nos pueden seguir pues en la página de Facebook e Instagram, que las vamos a poner acá abajo.
Thank you so much for that, Leanne. I appreciate your time and you sharing the services that your organization provide. We'll go on to Priyanka as a staff lead attorney at Project South. We know that you have a lot of experience in this area. Can you please talk about the detention landscape in Georgia, and what are the different detention centers and who are they being owned by?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mildred. Before we get to Georgia, I kind of wanted to look at it nationally. Can
Sure.
we go back one slide? Thank you. So first, before we can understand Georgia, I think it's important to understand where we fit in. So nationally, we have over 200 immigration prisons holding about 73,000 people. And 70% of the prisons are run by private prison companies, whose main mission it is to make money off of Cajun people. It is a business, right? So they are cutting costs and increasing profit. So that means they're skimping on basic services like sanitary conditions, food, and medicine. So not surprisingly, these prisons are notorious for human rights abuses. And things are only getting worse because this administration has violently expanded immigration enforcement and detention. So just to give a few examples, ICE officers are using a quota system, meaning that they have to arrest at least 3,000 people daily. ICE is literally occupying cities and conducting large-scale raids. The largest workplace raid happened right here in Georgia at the Hyundai plant. They're forcing policies that mandate local law enforcement collaborate with ICE through 287G agreements. So now local law enforcement officers are also doing immigration enforcement. Here in Georgia, we have 52 287G agreements. And they're essentially unilaterally changing immigration law to create extremely dangerous new precedents. They're removing immigration judges whose decisions they don't like. They're making it a lot harder to get bond and get out of detention. They're mandating detention for certain groups of people. They're removing legal protections for other groups of people. And they're increasing fees. So people cannot even afford certain legal avenues, even if they're available to them. So all this to say, more and more people are getting detained and there are less and less avenues for people to get out of detention. And now they're using horrific warehouses to cage even more people. So we can go to the next slide. In Georgia, we currently have 5 immigration detention centers that are mostly privately owned, either by Core Civic, Geo Group, or LaSalle Corrections. So we can see Stewart Detention Center is down on the left, down in Lumpkin, Georgia. It has about 2,000 beds, all for ICE. We have Irwin in Osceola, Georgia, about 1,003 beds for ICE and other folks as well. In Folkestone, which is like kind of on the border between Georgia and Florida, we have about 1,000 beds, but with the expansion would be 3,000 beds, all for ICE. In Dayton Detention Center, about 40 minutes away from Atlanta, in Lovejoy, Georgia, there are 800 beds, about 800 for ICE and U.S. Marshals. And then we have the Atlanta Penitentiary, which has 1,200 beds, both for ICE and Bureau of Prison. And now we have the possibility of 2 warehouses, one in Social Circle with 10,000 beds. So that's in Walton County, southeast from Atlanta, about an hour away. And then one in Flowery Branch near Gainesville in Hall County, about 1,500. And this does not even include all the jails that are actively collaborating and holding individuals for ICE. So this, dramatically expands the number if you include all the local jails. And I'll stop there for now.
Wow, that's disturbing. Thank you so much, Priyanka, for providing this very detailed information. all panelists, any of you all can answer this question. What are some examples of resistance and resiliency by people inside detention centers that you have seen?
I can go next. Thank you, Priyanka, for providing a larger picture of what is happening currently in the detention landscape, both nationally, also here in Georgia. I think it's fair to say that right now, Georgia is the fourth state with the largest number of people incarcerated by immigration, with the increase that ICE is, working on, including social circle and the Oakwood facility. Georgia will probably become one of the first states with a larger number of people incarcerated, with all of those new beds that have been added to the system. And it's just incredibly awful what is happening. Some people also posted a photo of what the warehouse was going to look like. Somebody compared that to slave ships, how people are going to be put in those facilities. And I think it's important to name all those issues. It's important to go back to all the neglectful conditions, what we know, the people experience in detention. I mean, your particular case, Mildred, and everyone here who is indirectly impacted, who have lived that. But also it's important to see that people impacted also have power, have a voice, and that they use their voice and they use their own bodies to even risk themselves to, put in solitary confinement, retaliation, and all of that in detention to fight against that dehumanizing system in detention. And we have seen that, over the years, and it's just incredible to see it, right? Unfortunately, we had to go to, these very difficult moments of seeing someone who is suffering, who is going through so much, neglectful conditions. But then even in that space, people have a voice and raise, their concerns to the public, for people on the outside to see it. I will put a few examples of what we have seen, and thank you for putting the photos. The photo on the left is a person who was detained for a long time at Stewart. He was sent to Irwin, and he was also the person who provided a lot of information to the organization's Project South about the inhumane conditions inside of the Irwin Detention Center. And somebody smuggled a camera inside of the cell, and he was drawing inside of that. And so just this very simple thing of drawing, putting this sample of, and it's like we put a few quotes, right? The one from Martin Luther King, injustice and everywhere, anywhere is it can read word injustice everywhere, it leads to injustice anywhere. So that just very simple act of defiance to the system, right? Defiance to say, I am a person, I'm a human being, and I'm going to fight for our dignity, right, in detention. And people do it. And again, this it makes them put their body on the line, right? Their own safety. They can be put in solitary confinement, sent to another facility, risking so much, right, just for being vocal about their conditions, or the reality that they live in detention. Another example during the pandemic, there are a few examples during the pandemic that we have seen that one person whose English was not his, he was not fluent in English at all, but he wanted to do his own, put his own part on voicing the concerns that was happening inside of the detention center, how people were treated inside of the detention center, that the facility wasn't provided mask, no soap, and they're trying to get attention from the guards, from the ICE officers, and they just never pay attention to their cries and their concerns. And he did one very simple thing. He just, in sign he was able to gather, he just wrote freedom. That's the only thing he did. He put it on the side of the bed. That led to, he be placed in solitary confinement, call an agitator, and then, again, spend many, many days in solitary confinement for just writing that, for that very simple act of resistance inside of the detention center. People inside of detention centers started to organize themselves. People refused to come from the playing area, from the time that they have for being outside, and they were attacked by the guards. They were, they came with this special unit inside of Stewart with with machine guns, everything, and throwing paper bombs to everyone. And the last example that we have here in the photo is another person that we were in contact with, Civic, who organized a sign-on letter, and he got about 120 people signing that letter, where everyone was expressing all the concerns about the unsanitary conditions that they were dealing in the detention center, and they were demanding, that they fix the air conditioning, that they fix all these issues, that they provided medical attention. So all these are great examples of how people inside fights to get their voice heard, and it comes with a cost. But nevertheless, people are resilient, and people are using every tool they have in order to express, their outrage about the conditions and how they've been treated. And, I think the only thing that we can do in the outside is to match their bravery with our desire to continue to support them and to listen to their stories, and contact people who can also do, investigations about the conditions inside of the detention centers.
That's really good, Amilcar. Thank you for the photos and expressing that. I'd like to add, I met with Nilson Barahona. He was in detention during COVID, and I know during COVID-19, the detainees there also did hunger strikes. They demanded masks, COVID tests, social distancing. Those are different things that they were not provided during that time. They came together with different sections of the detainment center, and I believe they did like a 10-day hunger strike of some sort. So that was very, very good information. Leanne, do you have any information that you'd like to provide briefly about, what some of these detainees are doing
Okay,
inside?
sí. Sí, puede,
Resilience?
no sé si, hola, sí, gracias. Si pueden compartir tantito los dos slides, los dos, por favor. Siguiente. Bueno, miren, aquí están algunas de las fotos, ¿verdad? Aquí está la primera foto que yo estoy mostrando como evidencia que cuando sufrí el ataque, pues mucha gente se alteró, y eso fue en el 2013 aproximadamente, sí, en el 2013. Y ahí están, pues que lejos de apoyarme, pues me criminalizaron. En la segunda foto es el forcejeo laboral, ¿no? Yo estaba trabajando por $2. Ahí pueden ver la foto que están agregadas las horas y todo. Después de que me encarcelaron, abajo también hay una carta que me escribían, que me lo pasaban de contrabando y que me llegaba hasta donde yo estaba en el consolitario confinement, mensajes de solidaridad, mensajes de resistencia. Y todo eso es cómo nos empezamos a organizar, huelgas de hambre y todo, Entonces, ¿pueden pasar la siguiente, por favor? Ahí están algunos mensajes muy, 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 muy poderosos que de tantas hojas que tengo por aquí por aquí con tantos mensajes que, que nos organizábamos allá adentro, cuando no nos dejaban salir, porque ellos no querían, para salir al patio. Mensajes como de que somos inmigrantes no criminales pero o de la manera en que también nos organizábamos cuando llegaba un momento de huelga de hambre. Yo recuerdo que nos alimentábamos con la pura con la pura sopita, ¿no? De marucha, con el puro caldito para no comer la pasta, para aguantar un poquitito las huelgas de hambre. Veíamos que no atendían a las personas, que se quedaban ahí las personas enfermas por un buen tiempo. eh, Había una persona que sangró, no sabemos de qué sangró. Lo que recuerdo fue que lo sacaron de ese lugar y no supimos nada más de esta persona. Y pues muchos de nosotros queríamos como explicación qué era lo que había pasado y los guardias nos decían que no solamente nos encerraban nada más. O cuando decían que era contrabando, llegaba llegaba la fuerza de seguridad pública y a todos nos ponían boca abajo para que no viéramos sus rostros todos cubiertos, ellos también. Y en ese momento revisaban los cuartos y encontraban supuestamente algo contrabando. Sí, se llevaban muchos documentos que le llamaban, que ellos les estaban que los denominaban como documentos de conspiración. Y cuando se enteraban de quién era la persona que lo estaba haciendo, pues nos metían al hoyo. Yo recuerdo que jugué una tarea muy importante en esos momentos de huelgas de hambre. So, que pasaba, yo me sentaba al lado de la puerta y por abajo de la puerta mentía yo los papelitos, y pasándolo de puerta en puerta. O si no, teníamos otro señor ahí que le decíamos el Chele, como iba a la iglesia. Entonces en su Biblia metía cualquier información de cómo teníamos que hacer la huelga. Y también teníamos también el loco catracho, le decíamos a Irwin. Y se llama Irwin Quevedo. Y este muchacho lo que hacía era tenía contactos con medios de comunicación de afuera. Y varias veces los medios de comunicación como Univisión y Telemundo nunca le hicieron caso. Pues pero escuchábamos de otras organizaciones que estaban haciendo el esfuerzo de visitarnos y todo. Inclusive hasta hubo consulados que nos decían, pues, que nos atemorizaban y decían de que no teníamos que hablar ni decir nada en contra de la política de gobierno de este país, porque si lo hacíamos iban a tomar represalias, que el juez nos iba a sentenciar más tiempo. Conocí a personas que estaban más de 4 o 5 años en esas cárceles de inmigración. Por lo menos en algunos espacios, pues tienes opciones como de hacer creatividad o hacer arte en otras cárceles que he sabido, pero en este espacio o en esta cárcel de plano no. Y así entonces son esos tipos de la manera en que nos organizábamos ahí adentro, ¿no?
Thank you so much, Leanne. Thank you for sharing your stories and all the different um, signs and your stories of resilience. I truly appreciate that. I would like to move on to Uche. Uche, you have a unique story also. Can you please talk about some of the work you've been able to accomplish through the organization you funded? And if you have any stories, I know you have stories of resilience, but can you go ahead and share that also? Uche? Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. I think Uche may. I'm not exactly sure where he went, but we can go ahead and move forward. Oh, Uche is saying he's having some connection issues, so we'll come back to him. For right now, we'll go ahead and go into the breakout rooms. When you enter the breakout room, please put your name, introduce yourself with your name and your pronouns. Any additional comments or reactions to what you heard? Have you heard any of these issues from the panelists before in the news or in your own community? Are some of the questions you can ask each other and answer. How do the topics of the panelists we discussed make you reflect? Here we are. Reflect on your own role in the immigration rights movement, and how can your group continue to connect? We'll be on for about 5 minutes, and we will report back after 5 minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed your time in the breakout room. If anyone have anything that they want to share, 30 seconds about what you learned in the breakout room, any experience you want to share. We'll keep it to 30 seconds per person, and then we will continue on with our presentation.
Yes, I want to share. This is Dr. Portia Miller Queen. I just want to share that how I got into fighting for immigration. I was fighting when I met a guy named Nilson. I met Leanne some years back, and we were fighting against President Joe Biden. It was his 100 days. And we did a major action out in Gwinnett County. And when we was out there, I used my privilege, as who I am, working, for the people. And I was able to sneak them into the barricade where he was. And Leanne came out with she had this beautiful dress on, and she came with this beautiful banner that said "Community and Not Cages." And girl, we shut it down. We shut it down, and that gave me the thrive and the fire to continue to fight for others, and continue to fight for my brown brothers and sisters, and to know Nielsen did a hunger strike while he was in there, and he was very sick. Manny, he was very sick, and he was going through kidney failure and things like that. That's how I understood that when I was fighting for prison reform, I ended up going into immigration reform. And that's when I realized that prison and detention centers was one and the same, all because they are capitalists on the body of humans, and they don't care. And just like they treated our people that's in prison, and the families I was fighting for when I was in the prison system, I had to leave because it was mentally tasking, the horrific videos. But that's when I found my love for fighting for immigration. So I just wanted to share that. That's how I end up in the fight.
I'd like to add to Dr. Portia Miller. Since she met my family, she has been a fierce advocate of making sure that Rodney get released. And she planned an amazing event. It's called the Hands Off Africa. Last week, we were at the Capitol protesting on the steps. We had a presser, and she's also planning our grassroots protest, which is planned for March 22nd for Rodney Taylor. So thank you so much for sharing. And we have time for one more person. 30 seconds, if you could keep it that way. And thank you, Dr. Portia Miller, for joining us tonight. Is there anyone else that would like to add? Okay, so we'll move on. Thank you all again for joining our breakout rooms. And so, all panelists, what does our community care look like for you? How do we build a radical support system that is rooted in love, not just survival.
I think I can start, but I also wanted to, and again, I wanted to apologize earlier. My laptop froze. I wasn't able to respond earlier. So technical issues.
It's
Apologies for
okay.
that.
Are you
Uh,
able to still answer the question that I asked you earlier? The question was, what is your examples of resilience with folks in detention? You have a beautiful story. And talk about the work that you've been able to accomplish through with your organization that you founded.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to respond to that. Somebody in our breakout group said something that I think was very interesting, and I think they said that detention, I don't remember exactly how they put it, but detention, that we shouldn't be calling it detention, we should be calling it like prison, and exactly that is what it is. Because
Right.
ideally detention is supposed to be a place, where people could be held for like a few days while their case is being discussed. But our detention in the United States, is important to understand that it's not a short-term holding space. Some people have been detained for years, as case may be. Somebody was actually detained for 9 years. This is a black migrant from Africa. I think he's actually the longest detained immigrant in the United States for 9 good years in ICE detention. Um, but I also want folks to understand that for Black migrants, specifically, the experiences can even be more severe. Black migrants are disproportionately impacted and targeted for detention. They are being held longer and more likely to face solitary confinement. Also, they often experience racial discrimination within facilities, language isolation as well. And for LGBTQ Black immigrants, most times they face even additional risk of, being harassed by the ICE officials, but also by other detainees. Um, Trans women specifically are being, detained in unit that doesn't conform to their identities. There's also medical neglect and abuse, but also folks have been fighting and resisting this facility. I specifically, personally, I was detained when I came into this country a few years ago, as someone who identify as queer and also fleeing persecution, originally from Nigeria, a country that has 14 years, a law that criminalizes the LGBTQ folks and posts 14 years prison terms to anyone who is a member of the community. And the work I did back home as an LGBT advocate put me at risk of being attacked, being mob attacked, and harassed by the public. My childhood friend was raped when he was 14 years. At the time, I was 15, and this was actually what led me to this work that I'm doing now. Because after losing my childhood friend, as a result of him being raped by four men, because he was perceived to be effeminate, and him testing HIV positive as a result of the rape, and then ended up committing suicide, was the moment that I
Wow.
felt that I needed to do something to stay safe, but also to demand justice for my friend. But as a teenager at the time, I don't know what justice looked like. I just knew there was something I was feeling, and I needed to stay safe. And that's how I got into, discovering LGBT organization that was fighting for the communities in Nigeria, and started volunteering with them, and finally being hired to work for the organization, where I was documenting human rights abuses and, doing HIV prevention work for the community before the law was signed in 2014 by the former president of Nigeria, which then led me to being targeted by the public. A lot of my friends and colleagues have been killed by angry mob because of, them identifying as LGBTQ, or just being providing services for the community. So coming to the United States to seek safety. I shared that story to kind of let folks understand some of the reason why folks are fleeing their home country. You know,
Yeah.
people, especially folks who are from the LGBT community. We are fleeing because the country doesn't accept people like us. So we needed a space where we could be to like, fully live our truth. And that's why I came to the United States to be able to seek safety and refuge. But my experience in detention was horrible. Like I experienced and I saw a whole lot of like, injustice happen. And that's when I started speaking up against the conditions in detention because I was like, why do I have to be here? First of all, I had a visa, so that's automatically guaranteeing me, to enter the United States because you guys gave me the visa, you interviewed me and gave me the visa. So why do I have to be here? Even if I don't have a visa, I have the right to migrate, right? So why
Correct.
do I have to be, caged? For trying to seek safety. So all of that wasn't adding up to me, and then coupled with medical neglect, and then somebody I witnessed the death in that unit, that detention unit where I was detained. I saw somebody die. That was the time I knew that is either you speak up against what is happening here or you stay here and this might be your fate because I started, getting sick. I was, being rushed to a few hospitals. And even while I was taken to hospital, I was shackled. My hands and my legs were chained to a hospital bed inside the detention, and they had
Wow.
officers guiding the door. So I was witnessing all of that, I started speaking, calling to folks on the outside. I really do appreciate advocates from the outside who are fighting for people in detention because a release campaign was launched, to demand my release and of course release of other people who were detained. And I could remember from my cell units seeing people outside the detention protesting and
Oh,
rallying. So like I was feeling this sense of joy and also sense of community, knowing that I didn't know all these people when I came to the US, but these people don't even know me, but they are here fighting for my release. So being able to peep that through my window, through the cell unit, the window from seeing all of that. I was actually detained here in Atlanta Detention Center, ACDC, which thank God has been closed. Um, so just witnessing that, I started reaching out to my lawyers. I reached out to late Congressman John Lewis, who wrote a release request to ICE and the facility demanding my release. So all of the advocacy effort that folks did, that was actually how I connected to Priyanka and Kevin, Priyanka's partner, who was one of the people visiting me while I was in detention. And till today, these people have, been part of my family here in in Atlanta. So it's important to understand, the experiences that folks go through while they're detained, but also people are turning that experience into like, fighting back and demanding that they are released, but also there's folks are supporting each other. So for Black migrants specifically, resilience often, shows up in cultural affirmation, and for Black LGBT immigrants, survivor, itself becomes an act of resistance in space that are not designed for our safety. So for the sake of time, I will end there. Um, but yeah, so I again appreciate folks who are on the outside and continuing to fight, and that is why the work I do is very important to me as someone who have gone through this experience, and that's also why I launched my nonprofit a few years ago because I wanted a space that I can fully support and advocate for people who look like me, people who are Black and queer and trans and immigrant, because most times our stories are erased in the narratives. So I want to make sure that, we and our stories are centered in the narratives that Black, queer, and trans immigrant, we are here, we exist, and we also go through detention. I lost one of my friend, a Black trans woman who fled her home country, and coming to the United States to seek safety. She was detained for about over a year. Few months after she was released, she died. And her story wasn't in any media. This happened in New York a few years ago. Her story was not, in the media. Nobody knew about it. Nobody talked about it. So a lot of times, our stories are swept under the carpet. People don't know that we are here. Our story exists and should be told. So that is part of the work that I do with Badger and also with BDL, like to make sure that I'm here uplifting the voices and the experiences of Black, queer, and trans immigrants.
Wow, what a powerful story. Thank you so much, Uche. Every time you share your story, I get like goosebumps. Because your lived experience coming from your home country and then to here and suffer some more when you get here, right? It's supposed to be the land of the free. And you had a plethora of people rallying for you, people that you don't know. That's the experience that I have right now with Rodney. We had so much people rallying for Rodney, sending him letters, Christmas letters, including you. You sent a Christmas letter. Those things make detainees feel remembered. Oftentimes, Rodney feel forgotten, like he feel like nobody remembers him. But it's actions like that that makes the fight worth fighting for. So thank you for sharing your story and your testament. We'll go into questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We would love to answer your questions. Yeah, just like what Sam said, incredible, Uche, incredible. All right. Well, if no one doesn't have any questions, I think I have
a question. I have a question.
Okay. There you go.
I have a question for each of the panelists.
Nice.
How can we? Yeah, if people have questions, yeah, definitely drop them in the chat. How do y'all think that we can, build community that is, not rooted in like survival and just trying to like scrape by, but is instead rooted in like community care for one another? For whichever of the panelists want to answer that one.
I'm happy to kick off on that. Thanks for that question. I think for me, community care is very important and is about shifting from crisis response to intentional belonging. It is more than, just creating mutual aid when there's an emergency. It is about building relationship where people can feel safe even before the crisis. In immigrant community, especially in Black, queer, and trans immigrant communities, we're often in survival mode. We're always organizing around detention, around housing, policy threat, and all of that. Yes, those work is very necessary, but we need to be asking ourselves, who is checking when there is not an emergency? Who is holding space for joy? Who is holding space for grief and also for healing? So it's very important that we are recognizing all of that. And for me personally, when I'm not working, I'm always figuring out how I can create a space of joy for myself and my community. So I do a lot of things outside this advocacy work. I host Afrobeat parties. I used to do it every month last year. I stopped doing it every month. So I do it like every, often. For me, that's like a part of me just, wanting to see our community in a different sense, so hosting Afrobeat party or just like having folks at my house. I cook too, so I always cook food, make sure everyone have food to eat. So I want to share my culture with the community as well. So I'm just making sure again that our stories are being told. So always like, looking for space where we could share our stories and, amplify the voices, is very important. So yeah, community care is definitely important, especially for immigrants.
Uche, when is the next Afrobeat party? So I can come. I would love to have some Nigerian jollof Even though, you know, the Liberian jollof is the best, but I'm just going to say that, you know. I believe someone mentioned, okay, a hotline number. Is that information available, or how can we secure this information for more support for those loved ones in our community who have been detained or may face deportation in Georgia? Samantha mentioned here, she answered the question. GLAR has a hotline number. She'll drop it shortly. Darian Jackson said, I just got back from a week of working and meeting with organizers on the ground with Haven, which just outside the Whipple, Minnesota, specifically to learn about how they stood up that operation and to meet the needs of the detainees and other families in such an urgent and unplanned situation there. So as we look at the potential facility at Social Circle and organize around the immediate needs, what groups should we connect with there?
Okay.
Groups already organizing and planning for Social Circle. Good question.
No sé si me escuchan, estaba levantando como la mano, no encontraba dónde.
I think folks have to change back to the interpretation that they need after the breakout rooms.
Oh, con razón.
Got it.
Estaba yo hablando y no escuchaban, pero bueno.
Thank you for answering the question.
Sí.
Okay, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
Estaba yo hablando bien rápido. So, sí, también les invitamos a que sigan a las otras organizaciones, ¿verdad? Que en esos espacios donde se sientan cómodos. Sabemos que esta lucha no es pues no es individual, como nosotros decimos, ¿verdad? Si nos tocan a una, pues respondemos todas. Y eso es importante, la colectividad, la solidaridad de estos espacios cuando puedan asistir, y si no, pues también compartan estos eventos, estos espacios que crean comunidad. Esto es un trabajo bien desgastante, y más cuando viene de personas impactadas, que todavía pues no es difícil de sanar toda esa trauma que se vive o que hemos vivido. Solamente nada más les pedimos que tengan paciencia, y que lejos de prejuiciar a las personas, pues sentémonos y pensemos de qué manera vamos a apoyarnos unos a otros, por más que se creen espacios, por más que se crean el trabajo, ¿verdad? El trabajo tiene que ser más que compasión, más que solidaridad, más que caridad. Yo siempre he pedido solidaridad. Nosotros tenemos cualquier cosa, nosotros que desean también espacios de sanación. Nosotros salimos, tenemos guerreros de liberación, que es específicamente para eso, que se trata de ir a los espacios afuera una vez al mes, para conocer los lugares como la playa, el mar, y entre otras cosas. Nos pueden seguir en las páginas de Facebook e Instagram. Están ahí, aparece una lista ahí de eventos. A lo mejor quizás lo podrán compartir en las páginas de también de cerrar la shutting down, Foxton Immigration Processing Center, Georgia Detention Watch Network, entre otras organizaciones a nivel nacional y local, que también están haciendo un trabajo increíble. Si quieren saber más, hay un grupo, por ejemplo, ahorita que estoy admiradísima de este grupo de Raymond Collective, que ha logrado grandes éxitos al amplificar la demanda de la extensión del centro de Ugut, la bodega de Ugut. Entonces, dentro de ellas, y sí, escúchenos, estamos en comunidad, y también celebremos nuestra resiliencia, nuestra resistencia. Y eso es todo lo que tengo que compartir, nada más.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Sam, for dropping all the links in the chat. Here are our call to action: the demand the release of Rodney Taylor with a petition. We've been struggling to reach 10,000 signatures. We're at about 7,000 signatures. Please share the petition and sign. We have a March 8th protest. The new ICE to shut down the new ICE warehouses. The protest will be March 8th outside the Walton County Courthouse from 2 to 4. The links to that again to register, Sam put that in the chat. Also, appreciate that, Sam. We have March 14, Atlanta People's Movement Assembly. Will gather hundreds of community members to prepare for ICE escalations and other law enforcement occupations. We know we can protect and defend our people, and the PMA will help us build our skills and coordinate our efforts. Sam, once again, dropped the registration link in that for more information. And then we have the March 22nd Free Rodney Taylor protest. Please follow Rodney's campaign page at Free Rodney Taylor on Instagram for more information about the protest. And I see a lot of people drop their links in the chat also. We would like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Without further ado, thank you all for your time. I would like to thank all the panelists for joining: Priyanka, Amilcar, Uche, Leanne. Thank you, Sam, for being who you are and putting this together. Thank all the organizations for sponsoring and coming on to make this event happen for ourselves, for our community, to drive change and have a better outcome as it relates to ICE and to abolish detention altogether. Thank you again. Have a good one.